Okay, welcome to all of you and thank you for joining us this kind of gloomy afternoon. It's not so sunny today. This is a special event that we're holding. One of our mentors is an expert in this field, and so we thought that you could benefit from his expertise, and we're presenting this event for you to learn more about franchising. But before we begin, let me just introduce myself. My name is Linda Zangrilli. I'm the current chapter chair of SCORE Bucks County. And a little bit of commercial break, if you will, about SCORE. Mike, can you turn the slide? We are a national nonprofit organization. We have 350 chapters and some 13,000 members all over the US. We have one mission: helping small business start, grow, and succeed. And we're a resource partner of the Small Business Administration. How we do that is we have 50 plus members with experience in all facets of business. Many are retired, many still working, but they come to us with a goal of wanting to give back to the small business community in Bucks County. We serve the entire county from Quakertown. We have offices in Quakertown, Lower Bucks, and Central Bucks in Doylestown. We offer free mentoring services. You can mentor for as little or as long as you wish. And we offer seminars like this free of charge as well. Okay, Mike. So if you need help with your small business and you haven't signed up and you'd like to take advantage of having a SCORE mentor help you, visit our website, buckscounty.score.org, or call our local number 215-943-8850. And likewise, if you are an expert that would like to give back and perhaps join us, turn the slide, Mike. Same information. If you want to become a mentor, a volunteer, a subject matter expert, or a workshop presenter such as this, same website, same phone number. Please contact us. We're always looking for people to help us spread the word about SCORE and help the small business community in Bucks County. So without further ado, I'd like to bring on our seminar chairman, Mr. Ed Torello, who comes to us as a retired Wall Street executive, and he has graciously accepted my my invitation to head up our seminar committee, and he's put together an entire year's worth of seminars like this, using most of our mentors that we have in the chapter and tapping into the expertise that they have to present this information to you. So without further ado, I'd like to welcome Ed. Ed, would you like to take over?
Yes, thank you very much, Linda, and thank you all of you for signing up. This is one of 30 plus webinars actually that we've put together for 2020/2021. We hope that in the future we'll also be able to do some in-person seminars, but for now the webinars seem to be working quite well. I have a couple of housekeeping things I just want to mention before I introduce our speaker. One of them is that the presentation is being recorded. The second thing is if you'd hold your Q&A to the end, but there is a Q&A icon there where I believe you can type in your question. If not, we'll open it at the end. And also all of you who are participants will receive a copy of the recording, so that you'll have that and you can refer back to it. Just 1 second on our presenter. Mike is a certified mentor for SCORE Bucks County. And interestingly enough, he served as a consultant for one of the nation's largest Taco Bell franchises, which, as you know, is, if not the best, one of the 1 or 2 best franchises in the country. He spent 25 years in the business, both as a franchisor and a franchisee. And he's also had extensive experience in managing over 400 corporate owned stores, which is quite a bit. So with that, I'd like to turn it over to Mike Phillips. And Mike, you can begin.
Thank you, Ed. And thank you all for attending. I'm going to add one thing to what Linda said. If anyone has interest in having mentoring sessions, I believe when you visit our website, you'll have access to the background or bios of all of our mentors. So you will be able to know in advance which of the mentors on our roster might serve you the best. So without further ado, we'll get into to franchising. So why business ownership? Most people dream of owning a business. And like anything else, it's not always what it's cracked up to be, where the grass is not always greener. Buying a business versus buying a franchisee, this is what we're going to cover today and do a deeper dive. Franchise myths, risks and rewards, and simplifying the search for the right fit in terms of acquiring a franchise. So why do you want to own a business? Here we go. Challenge, recognition, prestige. I'm going to see if I can move the, no, I can't move it. Okay. Build wealth for retirement. Time for family interest, although depending upon the franchise, that could be a misnomer, especially in the service industry, which is one of the franchises that's in most demand these days. And career independence. Financial security. So the growing markets presently that are driven by demographics for franchising, senior care, residential repairs, cleaning, essential services such as hair care, automotive, damage restoration, business coaching, expense analysis, sales training. So there are many businesses that thrive in all economic conditions. And I would say that in those businesses, your skills and management experience is transferable. Some interesting facts. 90% of all businesses in the US are small businesses. These businesses create more than 75% of all new jobs. And as you can imagine, during the current moment, soon to be changed with the vaccines, some of those jobs have temporarily disappeared. These businesses account for half of the GDP. And it's how 5 out of 6 millionaires made their money. So franchising certainly can be very successful. To create a startup business, there are several options. Buy an existing business, create a startup, and get into a franchise. I will take a moment to make a plug for one of our business members. It's called FranNet, FRANNET. They're a national organization. In fact, they're franchised. But they are franchise brokers, and they administer a rather lengthy test to attempt to find the best match for someone seeking a franchise. And there's no charge for their services. The franchisors that bring a referral into their system pays the fee. So let's talk about disadvantages and advantages of having your own business. Unfortunately, it's not all, rosy. So advantages, total control. I'm going to modify that a little bit because as a franchisor, you are under certain contractual obligations to the franchisor. So it's not quite total control, but certainly it's a lot more control than having a boss hovering over your shoulder. You make all decisions, and I'll modify that a little bit. If you're part of a franchise system and they have a national advertising program, there are certain things you're obligated to do. You can't change the creative, and most larger systems have a advertising and marketing co-op. Room for creativity. And again, to an extent, you can't change the product, you can't change the logo, and you can't change the trade dress. So those things are kind of set in stone. Large upside, absolutely, I can speak from experience. Build a business from your passion. So if you seek a franchise and you find something, I have a close friend right now who I've been assisting with evaluating some franchises. And he did find one that he's very passionate about. So it's possible in the next month or so we'll sign a deal. Disadvantages. You must, you must create systems. You have limited financial opportunities. It's slow to ramp up because you don't have brand recognition and has a very high failure rate. Later on, I'm going to show you some statistics that have remained pretty steady over the year, startup business versus franchise. And the difference in failure rate is incredible. Okay, buying a resale business. Advantages. There's already cash flow. Depending on your due diligence and the price that's agreed upon and how it's financed, that cash flow may stay the same or it may be diminished. There's goodwill. You get the actual financial results. It's attractive to lenders because it's a business that has stood the test of time and is less risky for the bankers. The market is already established, which means you have a customer base that's established. You have employees in place. You may or may not have systems. Not all independent business owners have systems. The more astute ones do. And owner financing is always a possibility. Disadvantages, cash flow. Depends on what it will look like before and after it's sold. There may be bad will. It's easy to check on the internet and either get star ratings or other sites that have people comment on the service or the product. There may be hidden seller motivation. This would require a good accountant to be on your team to make sure that what's on paper is correct. Higher debt service, and there could be poor training. And there's a word at the end I can't see because the picture box is obscuring it. Okay, buying a franchise. You have name recognition, licensed trademarks, which include what's called trade dress, which would be what the building, or at least the exterior, looks like, and also the interior. So using what Ed had to say about Taco Bell, even if you go into a store that's older, you know it's a Taco Bell. You know by the signage, and you know by the building, and you know when you're inside. where you see the menu boards and the interior dress, you're in a Taco Bell and not a Burger King. Training and support. Good franchisors, and most are good, not all, provide not only initial training, but ongoing support. And this is really important. If you fail and that sign comes down, or it may stay up for a while, they don't really want that. It's franchising, when done well, is really a partnership. And the best franchisors treat their franchisees as a partner. Now, having said that, the franchisor will always be the senior partner because they do control the advertising, the marks, and the products that are going to be offered. Marketplace expertise and purchasing power. Most of the better franchisors either have a purchasing co-op or a purchasing manager, and they trade on volume. And as a franchisee, you get the benefit of those volume discounts on products, supplies, etc. There's a much lower failure rate with franchises than there is with independent startups, and we'll get to those numbers down the road. Lower cost finance options. Again, most lenders consider a franchise with a good name and success less of a risk. And these, Linda mentioned that we are connected with the SBA, and many of our clients, whether they choose the franchising route or the independent startup, usually, not always, apply for an SBA loan. Location choices. You don't have 100% control over that. If you're in a franchise, you submit information about a location that you think will work, and maybe you'll submit 3 or 4, and someone from the franchisor will come and evaluate these locations, and they're either approved or in some cases they're not, and usually you'll get a reason why it's not. I'll give you a good example. When I was at KFC franchisee, the mothership wanted me to put a store on Route 13 in Tullytown on the northbound side. And I said, unless we're in the breakfast business, I'm sorry, southbound side. I said, southbound traffic is heavier on that side of the road. And our business is mostly dinner, some lunch, and breakfast wasn't even on the menu. So traffic is very important, where it is and where it's going. So I like to say there's 2 kinds of locations, BUY and BYE. And the BYE has to do with direction, ease of ingress and egress, placement of traffic lights, and a lot of other things. With the franchise, you have the ability to conduct unbiased research. The franchisor has a very, very large packet of information that they must disclose. And franchising is regulated by the Federal Trade Commission. And this disclosure, which is called a Franchise Disclosure Document, or FDD, must contain essentially the same information, and it must be in exactly the same order for them to get the go-ahead from the federal. Did I say Federal Trade Commission? So you could literally lay out side by side 2 or 3 different franchise disclosure documents and compare in the same, Article 1 is the same in all. Article 19, which is financial disclosure, is the same in all franchise disclosure documents. And you're part of the franchise family. And speaking first as a franchisee, it was always nice to know that I could call another franchisee, whether it was in my market area or in another part of the country. I actually had a lot of discussions with a KFC franchisee who had all of New Zealand as his territory. So you have the benefit of people who are in the same business as you and their point of view, which may differ, and give you other ideas. So that franchise family was always very important to me. As the franchisor, I very frequently, when dealing with a franchisee who had some issues that would have been better resolved by talking to fellow franchisees, I would attempt to match them with who I thought was a good match for them to review this problem. And it's kind of like in corporate life. It's nice to go to your boss and know he or she's a resource, but it's always better if you can talk to a peer. So I would match two franchisees. I'd call the matched franchisee and ask if he would be willing to talk to so-and-so about this topic. And it was a way of not so much reducing my workload, but getting peer-to-peer power going for problem solving. And if the franchisee wanted to deal with me or one of my people, that was fine too. Okay. So the disadvantages of the franchising: fewer industry options. Not all industries have franchises. A structured operating system in most franchises. So if you're an entrepreneur, chances are you may not make a good franchisee. Pure entrepreneurs want everything done through their vision and how they want it. And in franchising, it really doesn't work that way. There are territory restrictions. These will vary from franchise to franchise. Some use population to determine the protected territory, and some use mileage. Restrictions on one's ability to be creative. Again, I'll go back to that word entrepreneur. If grilled cheese is not on the menu and you start selling grilled cheese, there'll be a little bit of a dust up. Now, there's a word I think I invented several years ago called intrapreneur. Franchisors recognize that their partners are smart and have the ability to be creative. So every franchise with which I'm familiar has processes in place where you can bring an idea to the table and it will be vetted by the appropriate people. You may get permission to test a product, or you may get shot down. But there are ways to bring ideas to the table. Ongoing royalty payments, little initial cash flow from startups. Well, the royalty payments, you're getting the training, the ongoing assistance, The advertising, well, typically there's some fees for advertising that's separate from the royalties. So it's not like you're paying a royalty to the franchisor on an ongoing basis and not getting anything in return. So what is franchising? It's the creation of a distribution channel to build brand identity and attain market dominance quickly. Franchising is, for the franchisor, is the best way to grow using OPM, other people's money. So you represent other people's money to the franchisor. But again, it's not like you're not getting anything in return. The best franchisors really go hand in hand with their franchisees, because the more successful you are if you're a franchisee, and the more money you make, the more the mothership is getting in royalties. So it's a win-win. So part of what you get is a license for the name, trademarks, products, services, and very importantly, business systems. Most franchisors today have computer software that is common throughout the system. Everybody's on the same page. And when the franchisors, marketing and financial people do analyses, everybody's singing out of the same hymn book because of the systems and the software. Some franchisees charge for use of their proprietary software. So you are getting the name, trademarks, products, services, systems in exchange for the initial franchise fee. Every franchisor that I know of has an initial franchise fee. So when you sign on the dotted line, and all the legal papers are signed and sealed, you pay a one-time franchise fee, and the royalties are ongoing. When I did business as a franchisor and I was recruiting franchisees or screening franchisees, I told them something that they probably didn't hear from too many other places, is that once we sign those papers, they go in the file. If we have to bring out the contract to discuss a disagreement, we're in trouble. A contract, there's no need to look at it once both parties shake hands and the money's exchanged. So obligations for franchisor and franchisee. The territory, approved by both parties, and going outside of the territory, especially if there's an adjacent franchise, is really a no-no. One of the things that you will get in the disclosure document is a list by state of current franchisees with contact information, and also a list of past franchisees and information as to did they sell? Did the agreement expire and not renew? Or was there some, sort of issue that it wouldn't discuss the issue, but it may just say, contract terminated. I referred to Article 19 of the franchise disclosure document. That's the earnings claims and financial documents. Not all franchisors do earnings claims, but the best ones have found ways to give prospects some statistics on average revenues, the first year, second year, third year, et cetera. And sometimes there are financial statements That might be like the top 10% or maybe the bottom 10%. This information is very important. I know that the due diligence as far as getting that contact information for franchisees, one should have a list of questions and call as many franchisees as possible. If there are some that are close by, you should attempt to visit and have a meeting. Might be tough right now with COVID. But this is really the key aspect of due diligence. Franchisees do not want to see people come into the system and fail. They want people that are going to come in and run a good business, be profitable, and also, since you're part of the franchisee team, give wisdom and perspective to the entire system based on your life's and business experience. Manager policy, the disclosure document has much information on most policies. The franchise disclosure document is two parts. Part one is actually the disclosure document, and it makes all these disclosures and shows how many franchise exist or existed in each state over some period of time. I forget whether it's 3 years or 5 years, but so you can track how they're doing with growth, or if in some areas they're receding. The second part of the disclosure document is a specimen copy of the actual franchise agreement that you would sign. And it explains renewal options, termination, transfer policies, which means selling an existing franchise to someone else who obviously must be approved by the franchisor. And there's an awful lot of legalese in there, as you might imagine. I know there has been a movement for years to try and get these franchise agreements to look a little more like a document that doesn't take a lawyer to understand. And having said that, I absolutely would not go into a franchise without having an attorney. There are several franchise attorneys in the greater Philadelphia area. I believe there's one in the suburbs, might even be Bucks County, and there's a couple downtown. There are some large firms that have a franchise attorney. You're likely to spend more money. So this is a big undertaking. There's a lot of money involved. And if I was buying an existing business, I definitely would have a very, very good accountant. Current and past franchisees will let you know how they see the success or failure rate within the system. Again, because they don't want people coming into the system that may fail. They wouldn't give information to somebody walking in off the street, but once you have that franchise disclosure document and you have a letter from the franchisor and the current franchisee who's helping with due diligence will give you a lot of information. Every now and then, you'll even get some profitability numbers. I always asked if they could give me an idea, and sometimes I'd get it, and sometimes I wouldn't. The due diligence is extremely time-consuming. when I did mine, I didn't just do the franchisees that were near me, but I called all over the country. I probably spent, I don't know, several days vetting the system by talking to the franchisees. Okay, there are some franchising myths that are out there. So let's take a look. That franchises are only fast food and retail. That hasn't been true for several years, but it's still a very popular myth. Here's some facts. There are over 3,100 different franchise companies representing more than 80 industries with over 900,000 operating units. This research is from IFA, which is International Franchise Association.com. And that is someplace also one can visit and get information on franchising and on many, many franchises that are currently in vogue, if you will, or successfully operating. I did many speaking engagements for the IFA. It is one of the best trade organizations that I've been involved with in my long career, and they are a great resource. So right now, the popular categories are education, and one of my clients the year before last fell into this bucket of education, and I followed up with him, and he's very glad that he became a franchisee of this company, and he's doing very well. Retail, pet care, cleaning, real estate, senior care, home care. And there's two models for this, medical and non-medical. Most of the ones that are easiest to franchise would be non-medical. So you don't have to have RNs visiting and dispensing meds. Another one of my clients 2 years ago bought a franchise, a national one. But when I say national, it's not like a McDonald's where they're in every major market and they have critical mass so they can be on TV and radio. But they were in many states in the country. They passed what I consider the being in business successfully for 5 years or more. And the two partners that bought this, I checked with them a few months ago, and they're getting ready to acquire and continue to grow. Home repair and IT services kind of finish out the list. One of the ones that was listed earlier was restoration. So when you see those green trucks, and I forget the name of the company, that is a franchise. And I think their thing is like it never happened. If you've had flooding or some other disaster at your home, that's very popular. Franchisees succeed because of the quality of the product. Well, that's a myth, because is your hamburger better than McDonald's? If it's not the product, then what is it? So McDonald's, going back to, I believe it might have been 54, when Ray Kroc bought out the McDonald brothers and started franchising and growing very rapidly. Kroc, I don't know if anybody read the book, but Kroc was a person of great vision, and he knew what he wanted. He knew how he wanted the places to look. He was what I call a bathroom freak. When he made his rounds into the stores, before he went into the back or started engaging with the people, he would check the bathroom. And if the bathroom was a mess, he made sure that everybody in there knew that that wasn't acceptable. It may be the first or the last place that a customer would visit, but it's got to be clean. Because you think if it's really, really dirty and not maintained, what's it look like in the kitchen? How are things being handled? So some more facts. It really is about the business system. It's all these things combined, executed consistently, day after day after day. When I was a KFC franchisee, one of my customers said, boy, it really looks easy standing from the dining room side and looking back. I said, it is easy. It's just doing about 1,000 things right and consistently every day. That's how easy it is. So all these things listed work in harmony, and that's what separates the franchisees, franchise businesses from non-franchise. Most entrepreneurs that I've encountered, when they come to SCORE, they may already have a business and want to grow it or expand it in some way. Most don't have a business plan, and they really don't have, and I'm not criticizing the entrepreneurs. That's how many of them do business. They don't have systems, and the accounting sometimes is sloppy. Successful franchisees can emerge in a new industry with no new competitors. That's pretty entrepreneurial. Successful franchisees emerge from well-established industries by creating consolidation. And again, I repeat, it's the system. It's everything working in concert. McDonald's started when there was a burger joint on every corner. And they went on to become what's now the second biggest food franchise. When I say biggest, I mean by stores, not by revenue. The biggest is Subway. They have more stores than McDonald's. And Wendy's is rapidly catching up with Burger King and will probably surpass them in the next year or so. I don't want to stay stuck on fast food. So another myth, franchises are expensive. Well, there's a range. If you're thinking about a franchise, well, we are going to post, you'll get a copy of this, but I'd write these down. So 13% of franchises are under 50,000. So that's the cost that includes fees and getting up and running. 17% are in the 50 to 100,000. The big group, actually, the next two are 51% of the franchises for 100,000 to 250 and 250 to 500. And 18% are over 500. When I say over 500, I will use a Taco Bell number to let you know that between the real estate and the equipment and the build out, it's about $1.4 million. And that would include the dirt. So that's a pretty expensive proposition. Some people meet the criteria. You're not going to get into that with a net worth of $200,000. So how much do I need? 25 to 30% of the total investment will be your money. And then the financing for the rest, the 70 to 75%, is pretty easy to get. You have to be prepared. You have to have a business plan. You have to have financial projections. Anyone interested can talk to one of our mentors. Also on our website, there are templates for business plans, but you don't get money, whether it's an SBA loan or a straight loan from a bank, without having a business plan that makes sense. And an SBA loan, to let you know, you're not borrowing money from the Small Business Administration or any government agency. The SBA, when they approve the loan, they are a guarantor of the loan. So if you default and the bank can't get what's owed out of you, the SBA will stand behind it. So the sources for that 25 to 30% that you have to come up with, could be personal savings, friends, relatives, or a partner, home equity line of credit, financial institutions, seller financing if it's a resale. Usually when it's a resale, the seller takes back paper on that, so that if you stumble, he or she has the right to get the business back. 401k and IRAs would also be. Now, I'm not sure if crowdfunding belongs on this list. I know it's something that's come in vogue the last year and a half or two. Don't think I would go that route. But I guess it is a resource. So myth number 5, high return requires a high investment. Really not true. There's no automatic correlation between the cost of the franchise and the potential return. It'll vary. And a lot of it just has to do with the demand, for the product, and how one runs the business, utilizing all the systems and all the marketing materials that are provided, and all the training. Fact: service businesses require far less capital investments and frequently yield high returns. Now, my client that went into the home care business is a good example of that. The cost of entry was relatively low, including the initial franchise fee, and their return. They were actually profitable in month 5, which is pretty quick. So, and they're going gangbusters and hiring people and getting new clients all the time. Number 6, industry experience is required. Absolutely not true. Only 25% of franchisees are in the same industry as when they were employed. So I don't know if that's a hair cuttery. It looks like it. Hair cutteries are not franchised. They're all owned by a single individual. But there are other similar businesses that are franchised. So why own a franchise? It is over $1 trillion. It's a $1 trillion business segment. Less than 12% of all businesses are franchised in the NA is North America. However, that 12% account for an estimated 50% of all retail sales. And here's a biggie. I alluded to this earlier a couple times. Approximately 90% of franchises are still in business after 5 years versus approximately 20% of independent startups. So the corollary is 10%. I knew it at one time to be 11% so it hasn't changed much. Franchises fail, opposed to 80% of independent startups that fail. So I think the key point here is if you're looking for a franchise and you find something that you can really be passionate about and you follow the system because you're paying for it, and you do all those things that we discussed earlier, your chance of surviving is much greater. And I never had a problem paying the fees because I knew that my chances of failure were much lower than starting up. I'll use KFC as an example because my partners and I had 15 of them at one time. So, and none of them failed. Some were less profitable than others, but none of them failed. So these are from the International Franchisee Association, and they get this information by surveying businesses. But these numbers really haven't changed for probably 20 years. Pretty stable. Whoops. So, as I said, you're making a trade-off. You're exchanging additional operating costs in the long term for risk reduction in the short term. And I think that's a good, fair trade-off. So franchises are not all the same. Many units versus fewer units. Older and well-established versus newer. Structured versus flexible systems. Quite honestly, flexible systems scare me a little bit. There has to be some flexibility, but I guess it depends on how much flex. Because if you have 200 franchisees all making judgments on how they're going to utilize the system, my belief is that might not only create chaos, but may change some of those statistics that we looked at in terms of failure rate. And there's expensive versus inexpensive. All your major fast food brands are pretty expensive. They're all 7 figures to get up and running. And there are also, in fact, a friend of mine who's very, very serious about a particular franchisee. One of the things they give you in the franchise disclosure document is the low and high to get up and running, including franchise fees and all that. And if my memory serves me correctly from the franchise disclosure document, I think the low was about 150,000, and the high was about 600,000 to pay the fees and get up and running and start ringing the register. So again, figure on the high side that 30% is going to have to come from you, and the 70% can be financed. So there are franchises available to meet just about any business model and level of risk. Again, in assessing level of risk, that's where that franchise disclosure document comes in handy. You have names and phone numbers. And I'd be making dozens of calls if I'm investigating a franchise. So you're in business for yourself, but not by yourself. Again, one of the things that I really enjoyed about being on the franchisee side of the contract was this. KFC had units all over the world, so I could call anybody. And this was after I joined, and the partners got together and put up the money, and we negotiated a development deal. But there were franchises that I can think of. In fact, I actually went to visit one with my operating partner in, of all places, Nebraska. And the reason I went was because this franchisee who had 5 stores was making a killing in the catering business. And this goes back a long, long time ago. And as a result, we set up, he gave us all kinds of information, procedures, because we're certainly not going to be competing, with anybody in Nebraska. And we set up a catering program, and it was very successful. So again, by being in business, not by yourself, you have a whole cadre of fellow franchisees who want to help you succeed. And it's reciprocal. I had many, many operators call me for advice and what was your experience with this or that. So this is in here as an extra warning, if you will. Entrepreneurs, franchising may not be right for you because most true entrepreneurs, they want to do their own thing. And as a franchisee, if you're an entrepreneur, you're bound by a contract. You must follow the systems in place, display the marks and trade dress as per the franchisor's policy. In the franchise agreement, that's part 2 of the franchise disclosure documents, there are, as in some religions, there are sins that can be forgiven and cured, and then, there are major sins that can cause you to lose the franchise. And I'll give you an example. I won't name the company, but I was the COO of a system, very well known, and this brand was part of a portfolio of a larger public company. And my auditor came to me and explained to me numbers that didn't make sense for a particular franchise. And they didn't make sense by a long shot. So the franchisee was about an hour from where the auditor lived. So I knew that this franchise was in the wholesale business, which was allowed, and would sell to delis and other food places. So my auditor got up very early, parked in a place, and followed this guy on his rounds and watched and counted how many bags of bagels, and we knew how many he could fit in this, like a grocery store paper bag. And these royalties were not being reported. So this franchisee, I called, I knew him. I asked him to come to my office, and I presented, the audit and told him that he was $17,000 in arrears, and that unfortunately you've been cheating, and I can't have cheaters representing this brand. So 3 things are going to happen. You're going to leave here today and get back to me tomorrow and tell me how long it's going to take you to pay the $17,000 back. And I'm giving you 6 months to sell your store. And if you don't sell it, we will take it. So, I guess I wouldn't call him an entrepreneur. I'd call him a thief. So you really got to play by the rules. Oh my God, we're early. We're 25 minutes ahead of schedule. So remember, if you don't have a dream, the person you work for probably does. So we are early, but we can now process any questions that have been sent in, and that will get us closer to 2:30.
I'm gonna unmute.
Ed,
Can you hear me, Mike?
I can.
Okay. We have a question from Lynn. She says, thank you for the presentation. And I have a question. If Hair Cutlery is not a franchise, it's independently owned, then what type of business model is that considered?
Well, that would be, I'll give you an example. Gino's Restaurants. For those old enough to remember, because the company was sold, Marriott bought its stock around 1980. Gino's had 360 restaurants. They were all company owned. And it had 119 Rustler Steakhouses, all company owned. The chairman and co-founder of the company didn't believe in somebody else having his baby to play with. So Hair Cutlery, these stores they have managers, but one gentleman, and I forget his name, is the owner of all the stores. So, but there are others, and I can't think of the name, that are franchised. And by the way, thank you for the question. So there now most fast food companies have a combination of franchise and company stores.
Okay. Another question. When you're looking at these royalty payments, when you start out, is it structured so that they're small payments, and as your revenue grows, the royalty number grows? And is there a point at which that cuts off, or is it always a percentage of the revenue?
Very good question. Thank you. There are some, they are in the minority, that have a stair-stepped royalty program. In the early days, it's lower, and it gradually, as your revenue increases, gets to a certain point and then levels off. I know of no franchise, it doesn't mean it doesn't exist, that at some point royalties stop. I believe everyone collects royalties because that's their biggest source of revenue, is the royalties on the franchisees' revenues.
No, that makes sense. Another question for you from Susan. How important is location and who owns the property?
Thank you for that, Susan. Well, I've always said the two most important things in being successful, and it doesn't apply just to franchising, is where are you going to fly your flag and who are you going to hire to be on your team? If those two things are done right, you have a really good chance of succeeding. When I had the KFC franchises, some I leased, and KFC had a clause in the contract that the contract was 20 years. So I had to have term and options that equal 20 years. For example, a 10-year term renewable for another 10. In some, we owned the real estate. And if you can own the real estate, that's a very good thing because you can create another entity and have the business, the franchise business, pay the rent to this other entity. I had one that was what was called a 99-year leasehold. The gentleman wouldn't sell the property, and we negotiated a 99-year, it's called a leasehold. And most franchisors are open, especially those businesses that might operate on a shopping center or a strip mall. Chances are you're not going to own the real estate. You own your equipment and your furniture, but that's about it. So depending on the franchise and their bent toward ownership, a lot of times if the franchise is a freestanding building, there's a better chance to get the real estate. I know my Taco Bell client, I can't tell you how many stores that might give it away, but they own the real estate somewhere between 50 and 60%. So that is a very, very healthy revenue stream just from paying
Mhm.
rent into the real estate partnership.
There's two other questions right now. One is from Mark, and he's asking, would you expect that all franchisee firms would be able to give you information on how many of their franchisees failed and explain the reasons why they believe they failed? Or do franchisee firms try to hide that info?
Well, thank you, Mark. It's not being devious. I do believe they're concerned about, libel. But in the franchise disclosure document, it does tell you if the store closed or if the agreement was terminated. And when you do your due diligence and you talk to other franchisees, and if you ask three the question of what happened and you get the same answer, you can pretty much take that to the bank. Every now and then, the franchise sales person or somebody in very senior management might tell you, wink, wink, what happened. But again, there's some potential legal liability. So there is a way to find that because it'll show, like in the state of Texas, in 2019, we had 8 stores, and now we have 2. So you want to know what happened to those 6. So you ask around and you'll get the answer.
Okay. Another question is employees, which are probably the backbone of the business next to the whole financial picture. How did you go about screening your employees to get the ones that you felt had the most enthusiasm for your products?
Well, I had a background in a very large corporation. I was the head of human resources. And on my way up, I did thousands and thousands of interviews. So I kind of had a core amount of questions that I asked everyone. And then depending on their answers and their experience, I would go further. I did not have any validated pattern interview or anything that was scientifically driven, but I also had a really good gut. And I wanted to make sure it was a cultural fit too. And I still go by this. I'm not hiring anymore. One of my other clients, I actually am the front person for hiring. And this is a professional corporation. If I bring somebody in and I see early that they're not going to be a fit, I don't wait, because your other employees are evaluating your hiring decisions. And if you're bringing in slugs, they're going to lose respect for you. They may even want to go someplace else. So I always felt that I'm going to hire the attitude and teach the hands. And that has served me well in several positions in different industries. Because if I have somebody that, is a Ferrari and that thing is revving up, as opposed to someone that doesn't look me in the eye and has a handshake like a dead fish, but has related experience, I'm going to take that Ferrari. I'm going to take a chance that I can teach that person what they need to know to be successful.
As long as he wasn't raiding the cash register to pay for the car.
Well, we had plenty of checks and double checks against that.
I'm just teasing.
Yep.
When you look at the amount of money that you're putting down, you mentioned probably it works out to about 25% you or so, and about 75% you need to obtain financing. And
yeah, more like 30, 70, but some get 25.
Okay. After your first franchise, let's assume it's quite successful, and you go to the bank to talk about a second one. Do those percentages hold, or will the bank give me 80 or 90% knowing that I'm a pretty good risk from the first one?
Well, the first thing you do before you talk to the bank is talk to the franchisor. Sometimes when during the initial negotiating period, you may be able to negotiate a multi-unit or store franchise. Typically, they have a timetable. The world doesn't come to an end and your head doesn't explode if you get behind in the timetable, as long as you're demonstrating good faith and best efforts to get that second unit. It all depends, and there are other people in our SCORE mentor group that can answer this better than I can, but it all depends on how the bank sees what you have as security. So if this business is doing well and some of the debt is paid down, and based on the revenues, there's substantial equity and goodwill, yes, you may be able to borrow more money.
If you looked at a typical franchise with this 70-30 financing program, how quickly do they pay down on average the debt that they incur? Is there any rule of thumb that you would use? It takes 5 years or 10 years or?
No, it really depends on how much is financed. I mean, the 70%, could be 150,000 or it could be 600,000.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
So I really don't want to just guess. I don't know.
Okay. Lynn has a question, and it's a two-parter. What is the benefit to the owner if he or she franchises his business and or people who operate independently? So,
what's the advantage over franchising
versus somebody operating it independently? If I franchise my business, and is that a better way to go, or is it a better way to sort of, I guess, have somebody come in and operate it independently?
Well, if they're operating independently, there's no franchise.
Right.
I don't think. But I mean, there are licensing agreements that are much different from a franchise agreement. So there are quite a few of those that are out there. But I guess it depends on the philosophy of the executives or founders or whatever, as in the case when I worked with Geno's. Franchising is the best way to grow your brand using other people's money. But it's also not a shell game because we discussed earlier that in exchange for the franchise fee and the royalties, you get support. Anytime I called KFC headquarters in Louisville and I wanted to talk to somebody, I was treated with respect. I was treated as a partner. And sometimes somebody needed to get on a plane and come meet with my partners and me on an issue, and they would dispatch somebody. So the franchisor really has an obligation of service to the franchisees because they don't want franchisees in the system that aren't successful. It's bad for the brand.
When you're running your franchise and you're buying, assume it's a food one, so you're buying all the food and the buns and the hamburgers and everything, the franchisor supplies everything to you at about the same cost to everyone in the system? So there's no favoritism?
Yeah, my experience, there's no difference in costs from one region of the country to another. But the franchisor, by nature of its critical mass with, let's say 150 franchises, is in a position to negotiate a very, very good price, and all the franchisees benefit from that because you as an independent business owner would not be able to buy those buns and ketchup and all those other things at that price.
Right. I was thinking in terms of if I own 10 of them and you owned one, would I get a better price because I'm taking more stuff? But the answer is no, I guess.
No.
Okay. And on the advertising side, how is it determined as to where and how much and how to spend the advertising dollars?
The advertising is bifurcated. Most franchisors have a national fund, and a certain percentage of your revenue goes to the national fund. If they don't have a local co-op, then you must spend a designated portion of your revenue on marketing. Once there's enough, and I guess each franchisor would decide when there's enough to form an advertising co-op, because then you get a better deal on media and other things. And my experience is it's not necessarily a formula. It's when there's so many outlets in a given market, then the franchise contract requires those franchisees to form a co-op. What you contribute for local advertising doesn't change. You just pay it to the co-op, and the co-op meets from time to time and does usually a quarterly plan on spending. And each franchise system has like a regional person, if you will, who's your primary contact. And they may cover either a number of stores or a geographic region. And he's or she is your one-stop shopping center. And because you don't have the org chart of the company, that person does the running for you.
I remember you said that you have to stay within the rules and you have to follow what they say. But on the advertising side, how do they make decisions locally on that, on this co-op, for example? Does everybody, if you're part of the co-op, you all have to go along with what they say or not? Or because
The
that
co-op,
should,
yeah, go ahead.
no, go ahead.
Okay. Well, first of all, the co-op doesn't create its materials, whether they're what they call window cleanings or signs that go on the stanchion, the pole that's close to the corner or close to the street if it's on a shopping center. The corporate marketing department produces all those materials, and all the franchisees have to use them. If you look at Dunkin' Donuts and they're running, the pumpkin muffin is back. It's the same sign in all the stores. So what the franchise local co-op is going to determine is they'll know what the mothership's going to do. Do they want to layer on top of it and create more power, or do they want to do something else? But again, using all the material, you don't go to the local print shop and print your own material with the franchisor's logo on it. It's all tightly controlled. And then what I've been involved in co-ops both ways. It is a democratic process, and the franchisees vote. Now, when I had the 15 stores, that was one vote. I was one franchisee. Someone else that had a single store had one vote.
Okay. It's interesting. Dunkin' Donuts, I read, actually used to own their stores, and now they've just about franchised all of them.
Yeah, they have very few.
Yeah.
And the parent company is Dunkin' Brands. They also own Baskin Robbins.
Yeah.
And there's another brand, and I can't think of it right now. They're doing very well.
Yeah, they are. Actually, there's one here by me. It does extremely well. Okay. I think we've come to the end of our questions. I'd just like to remind all of our attendees that this recording and the slides will be sent to you, to all the registrants, after the webinar. So you'll receive all of this information and you'll have it. And if you have any questions, you can email Mike or Mike Phillips and say your email, Mike, so that this way, the one they should send.
It's mike.phillips@scorevolunteer.org, I think it is.
Yes, that's correct. And so you can email Mike and he will be happy to respond. So again, thank you very much for participating, and we're going to end the meeting. Thank you.
Thank you all.